When Canada entered World War I on August 5th of 1914, it had a population of just under 8 million people. Over the course of the 51-month duration of the war, 630,000 of them served in the military. In total, 400,000 served overseas with the Canadian Expeditionary Force. Over 60,000 of them were killed, while another 172,000 were wounded. They are part of the Canadian landscape. Cenotaphs stand as silent reminders of the losses suffered by towns and cities from coast to coast. This one, which bears the names of the young men from the area lost during the Great War, is particular in that it includes the names of not only one, but two soldiers who were awarded the Commonwealth's highest decoration for valor in the face of the enemy. Young men of uncommon bravery who are among the very few to have been awarded the Victoria Cross. For most conspicuous bravery and extraordinary devotion to duty, when in charge of a Lewis gun section in the front line trenches, in which a strong enemy raid was attempted. During an intense bombardment, Corporal Kaeble remained at the parapet with his Lewis gun shouldered, ready for action, the field of fire being very short. As soon as the barrage lifted from the front line, about 50 of the enemy advanced towards his post. By this time, the whole of his section, except one, had become casualties. Corporal Kaeble jumped over the parapet and, holding his Lewis gun at the hip, emptied one magazine after another into the advancing enemy, and although wounded several times by fragments of shells and bombs, he continued to fire and entirely blocked the enemy by his determined stand. Finally, firing all the time, he fell backwards into the trench, mortally wounded. While lying on his back in the trench, he fired his last cartridges over the parapet at the retreating Germans, and before losing consciousness, shouted to the wounded about him, "Keep it up, boys. Do not let them through. We must stop them." The complete repulse of the enemy attack at this point was due to the remarkable personal bravery and self-sacrifice of this gallant non-commissioned officer, who died of his wounds shortly afterwards. London Gazette, September 16th, 1918. For most conspicuous bravery and outstanding devotion to duty, when in charge of a company which he led an attack during 2 days with absolute fearlessness and extraordinary ability and initiative, the extent of the advance being 12 miles. On the first day of operations, shortly after the attack had begun, his company's left flank was held up by an enemy machine gun, Lieutenant Brillant rushed and captured the machine gun, personally killing 2 of the enemy crew. While doing this, he was wounded, but refused to leave his command. Later on the same day, his company was held up by heavy machine gun fire. He reconnoitered the ground personally, organized a party of 2 platoons, and rushed straight for the machine gun nest. Here, 150 enemy and 15 machine guns were captured. Lieutenant Brillant personally killing 5 of the enemy and being wounded a second time. He had this wound dressed immediately and again refused to leave his company. Subsequently, this gallant officer detected a field gun firing on his men over open sights. He immediately organized and led a rushing party towards the gun. After progressing about 600 yards, he was again seriously wounded. In spite of this 3rd wound, he continued to advance for some 200 yards more, when he fell unconscious from exhaustion and loss of blood. Lieutenant Brillant's wonderful example throughout the day inspired his men with an enthusiasm and dash, which largely contributed towards the success of the operations. London Gazette, September 27th, 1918. In December of 1918, the Governor-General of Canada, the Duke of Devonshire, travelled to Rimouski to present, in the name of King George V of England, the Victoria Cross to the mother of Joseph Kaeble and to the father of Jean Brillant. It was, as far as any could remember, the largest gathering the town had ever witnessed. When came time for the mayor of Rimouski to speak, H.G. Lepage said, "When the country came calling, our sons, our brothers, and our friends came from all corners. They left the land, factories, businesses, and the rugged forest to volunteer. In addition to Joseph Kaeble and Jean Brillant, today we also remember the death of so many of our brave young men. Our people's voice shall cradle their graves."